Hi, everybody. Welcome to business class number 5. So excited. Okay. Should we just get right to it? Let's get to it. Okay. Here we are with our PowerPoint. Look at how far we've come, and we don't have that much farther to go. We've done our intro. We've talked about being our own sort of creators and therefore our own marketers. We've talked about marketing plans, the creative process, and today we're going to talk about press and publicity. And then we have A-list vehicles, visual expression, advertising, digital and viral, and then finding success. So due for today is the case study for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And this is specifically on perspective storytelling, and that's Appendix C in your workbook. Also, hopefully you've also read a free PR critique, which is actually very interesting and funny, if not a little bit sarcastic. Okay. So here we are with class 5. We're going to be looking at press and publicity, project launch, media relations, press materials, and media events. And then class 6, we'll be talking about A-list vehicles, markets, trade events and festivals, awards, and strategic partners. But for this video, we're just going to focus on press and publicity. Okay, so let's say that your project has been funded, it's been greenlit, and it's in production. Yay! You've got your marketing plan and you're ready to go public. Now, what you need to do is finalize your launch strategy. Some of the key decisions may have been made, well before the project even went into development, but you were probably busy with getting the project greenlit in the first place. Distributors and their marketing departments usually make these decisions about the launch strategy, timing, and the launch vehicles. But understanding the considerations that they're weighing can actually help you contribute to the discussion if and when you get to this point with your project. But also, if you're independent, you have to understand all of this terrain in order to produce a launch strategy and launch it yourself. So first you have to decide to whom to launch or announce your project. So you want to go back and consider your brand archetype again. If you still have things to, lock down like funds, distribution, and partners, then it's best to launch your project to industry influencers. Markets, festivals, conferences, and press events are all effective ways to reach influencers. You can also launch directly to your audiences through affinity groups, like their online platforms or events, or you can do both. The next thing is you have to decide when to launch. When will your project be announced to the public, or when will it premiere? If you start with your premiere date, you want to basically work your way back 6 months. And that's about when you can announce your project. The promotion can overlap with the post-production. Look at the rhythm of the calendar too. And we're going to actually be talking quite a bit about this in the upcoming videos. But summer is mellow. September is all about going back to school or going back to work. The 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's is family oriented. So you want to factor in your own project's themes to when you decide to launch. Christmas and summer are popular for the release of children's films and blockbusters because of vacations and, the fantasy mood of dog days of summer. Fall and January are big times for television watching, which capitalizes on, it's called HUT, H-U-T, which is an acronym that stands for Households Using Television. Most book and game sales occur during the fourth quarter because of gift giving. Do you guys all know what the quarters of the year are? So if you don't, let me know so I can explain that further. But basically, we're looking at the fourth quarter for the highest sales because of, well, Christmas. Studios release Oscar-worthy films in November and December to boost their chances of getting a nomination, and we'll talk more about that in our class lecture on awards. And also on Christmas Day, which has become a really sweet spot for wide release of films. Network TV cycles begin with creative pitches in the summer through the fall, development during the winter, pilots, and what's called upfronts in the spring. Upfronts, that's basically selling advertising to sponsors. And then promotion is in the summer. Programs used to be circumscribed to just a 1 week time period in September, and they were all covered in a single issue of TV Guide, as you can see here, this image on our slide. So fall is still a dominant time for launching new TV series, but basically that 1 week in September is now spread out over 4 to 6 weeks. Also, January is the new September. There are launching standouts like Downton Abbey, American Idol, The Bachelor, Girls, Suits, Pretty Little Liars, and True Detective, for example. So you also want to consider your competitor schedules too to avoid competition if necessary. One of the reasons shows are spread out is just the sheer magnitude of them and the knowledge that basically TV critics have to watch it all, but they can't. So they can only review, a finite number of programs in any given week. So now you have to decide how to launch, and you can do the big reveal in 4 key ways. You can do it via an event, you can do it via a press conference or like a broad-based press release. The third one is a publicity exclusive with a major media outlet. And the fourth one could be directly to your audiences through digital platforms, promotional assets, or stunts. Comic-Con, E3, music or heritage festivals, the Super Bowl, an exclusive story in USA Today or the Today Show, for example, those could all be ways to do this. The Blair Witch Project premiered at Sundance, and it was picked up by IFC, which is the independent film channel, who was actually complicit in distributing flyers around college campuses about the quote-unquote found footage, but also had a faux website, IMDb profiles, police reports, missing posters, and helped in circulating rumors about the missing characters. Now, this kind of like guerrilla marketing strategy is a bit risky in a post 9/11 world. So you want to be a little bit careful and like tuned in, with the times. Like what was okay before 9/11 may not be okay post 9/11. So just be aware. Okay, now we have media relations, and here we're going to talk about advertising versus publicity, journalists versus bloggers, and entertainment publicity. Media relations is a subset of public relations, which is a broad set of communication activities designed to create and maintain positive relations between an entity and its publics, such as audiences, press, industry leaders, partners, employees, stakeholders, and government officials. The press is a target audience, and this is important. Your job, with all audiences, is to serve their needs. The best way to get the press's attention in a really crowded, some might say overcrowded field, and persuade them to cover your media project is actually to do their job for them. So think about write for and produce materials for your project just like a journalist would. So in order to do this, you should be watching and listening to or reading their coverage on other topics and then imitating that. And then pitch a story about your project that basically, serves the media outlets' audiences. Okay, advertising is paid for. Publicity is called earned media, which means that someone's sharing it. The distributor's creative teams design and craft the message based on the intended medium, and media buyers purchase placement and timing of ads in chosen media outlets. So when you hire a publicity team, you're basically looking for two attributes: the ability to pitch a good story and solid press and blogger relationships. Publicity tools include, written pitch letters, press materials, graphics, photography, could be video trailers, and review copies. Media relations includes phone calls, background info, interviews with spokespeople, press conferences, and events, and similar things. A decade or so ago, no one actually took bloggers seriously, and that goes for now. It goes for Instagram, YouTube, and other influencers in the past 5 years or so. But in the mid 2000s, when influencers requested review copies or backstage passes or tickets to premieres, they were basically told no. But that's actually not the case anymore. Influencers like mommy bloggers, as they were called, were reaching about 35 million women. And so things started really changing in about 2005. And that actually isn't very long ago. We started to see like veteran critics being eclipsed by these kinds of influencers. IMDb, Metacritic, Deadline Hollywood, for example. And it actually, these bloggers ratcheted up the credibility of online critics. I guess I'm curious if any of you have been contacted to become brand ambassadors on Instagram. I think some of you have. I know SGS has been contacted a couple times to be a brand ambassador. And so, the way that that things have been changing is that audiences are actually more trusting, less trusting of paid advertising and more trusting of people's opinions. So if SGS is, a trusted opinion on creative writing, then the products that SGS chooses to represent on our Instagram account, like we're saying that we believe in these products. So whenever I've been contacted to be a brand ambassador, which actually is only twice since we had Silka come in the fall, I said no, because the first one was clearly a company who was buying things from Wish and reselling them. And the second one wanted me to, and I'm still in discussion with them, but they want me to, be a brand ambassador for their like health drinks and stuff, which I'm into, but they won't send me a sample. So they want me to buy samples. So I'm just like, if you want to send me a sample, I'll be your brand ambassador if I like it. Because they had something called Unicorn Punch. And I'm like, how could I not love that? Anyway, so, it's interesting the way that this trend is changing and that influencers actually have a lot more credibility now than they did 10, 15 years ago. And this means that you guys also have the ability to create this kind of audience and become influencers yourselves. Entertainment publicity covers press for trade and consumer audiences, and it includes both news and feature stories. Trade publicity supports film, TV, games, books. It creates buzz and credibility. The distributor's PR team sets up screenings or sends review copies or links to shows, films, books, games, etc., up to about 6 months in advance of the launch. And they do this basically, they send these links out or review copies out to influencers and critics so that if you were to get a review copy of a Stephen King book that's coming out in 6 months, then you're getting that book so that you can write a review of it and that you can actually post your review when the book comes out. So, if you send out 1,000 copies to major influencers, then these influencers have audiences, and then, it spreads, just like the pandemic. And, this is a really good marketing strategy if you can hit, these key influencers in certain fields and get them to read or watch or engage with your product in some way about 6 months before the launch. Okay, some trade publications maybe you've heard of and maybe you haven't. Here, of course, this image is the Hollywood Reporter. Variety, IndieWire, and Screen International. Now, I will go into more detail on more like trade magazines later, but now we're going to move on to press materials. Press materials, they're also called press kits. They're basically a portfolio of materials on a company or a product developed. This press kit is developed specifically for journalists. Well-written press copy is critical to presenting your transmedia project properly and providing journalists with the information they need to do their jobs. Generally, this is written like quote unquote in-house, but regardless, it must be approved by all the major players on the project. So I know some of you know that I worked at Warner. I worked at Rhino Records, and then Warner Music Group acquired Rhino Records. And I was in sales and marketing, and there were only 3 of us on the sales and marketing team. But what would happen was we would get artwork, for example, from the art department. So it would be the artwork for a CD cover, the liner notes, some advertising campaigns and things like that. And it was like printed out, like, okay, that's better. Okay, it was printed out into, sheets of paper about this big. And it would be probably 3 or 4 pages. And this 3 or 4 page folder of materials would be passed around to every department. So sales and marketing, it would go to who else did it go to? Everybody. It went to the A&R people, it went to the account managers, it went to the sales representatives. So it went all around Warner, and I would say about 10 different departments had to actually sign off on the art. So you would get these sheets of paper, and I would write things, I would make corrections that had to do with sales and marketing. Of course, somebody else would, make corrections based on maybe what the artist wanted or something like that. So we'd all make comments. It would go back to the art department. They would make those changes. They would reprint it, and then they would send it back around until everybody signed off again. Sometimes it would circulate 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times. So don't be surprised if you don't get it right on the first try. I would be surprised if you got it right on the first try, and that's not a challenge. You have to get everybody's input because everybody has a different talent for seeing different things. So it might be spelling and grammar. It might be, the release date is wrong. That could be bad. The price point is wrong. Also, that could be really bad. So, all of the components, get your team's eyes on it and get it signed off and approved by everyone. Now, at the same time, just because it's coming around for approval doesn't mean that you need to give an opinion. It's at that point, it's not brainstorming time. At that point, it's, is this correct information? If it is, sign off on it. Unless you see any like glaring mistakes, you sign off on it because otherwise you just make the art department go crazy. It should circulate probably at least twice, maybe 3 times. And then you can sign off on artwork and materials and things like that. Journalistic style basically follows these basic precepts of news copy. And so, you've probably seen this when you've read newspaper articles, either in a real newspaper or online. So basically, you have an engaging headline. And the headline, and this, this like really goes against like what we're taught when writing fiction. And so that's why we do actually have a semester where we will talk about how to write journalistic copy. But for now, this is just sort of a crash course in how to do it. And if you read some, news articles, New York Times, LA Times, the Washington Post, just take a look at some of these like newspapers and use those as your examples. But basically, it goes against what we're being taught because the headline is, the most exciting piece of information, right? You're not going to save that till the end of the book for a final twist. The final twist goes right up there in the headline. It's the most newsworthy piece of information. All the key information is delivered quickly and upfront. So you'll notice in a newspaper article, you'll have a headline that tells you exactly what it's about. 3 people found shot at McDonald's. That was a headline from today. The next piece of information, is key information that you're delivering upfront and quickly. And then details are provided in the subsequent paragraphs. So it's like you give the most critical information right up front. And then if people keep reading, they'll get more details. That shooting happened in Kentucky. It didn't take them very long to catch the 2 people or the one with the gun. They were only 2 blocks away from the McDonald's where they, shot these teenagers. Anyway, the point is like people were shot. And what's the most important information? They're not in critical condition. They'll be okay. And the suspects have been caught. So you want to put that up front and then give the details afterwards. And then the ending speaks to the future. So this could be a call to action. This could be something, that's going to happen in the future regarding this news story. Or what people can do if they want to volunteer, something like that. Press materials should be written to inform. They're not written to sell or to oversell. Okay, so you want to avoid MBA buzzwords. And of course, for the article that you read for today, the free PR critique, that article is so funny and so sarcastic and sassy. But, it really speaks to the misuse of these like MBA buzzwords that students learn when they're, getting an MBA in marketing. So you want to avoid those because oftentimes they just sort of like junk up the information, and journalists can't do anything with that. Journalists just need to know the information and the facts, like right up front. Just give it to them so they can literally copy and paste what you've written into their news article. That is going to get you the most press, the fastest. Okay. The press release is the primary vehicle for communicating to the press. A press release is a memo. It's a letter. And it includes all of these pieces of information. It's a short memo of information. You never release or speak about the launch date for your project without permission from your distributor. That's their news. It's not your news, believe it or not. So do not talk about the press release if you have a distributor, because the distributor is going to release that information. The press releases include a headline, and the headline summarizes the news and it grabs the attention. Then there's a subheadline, and this provides like a synopsis of secondary news. Then there's a dateline, and this has the release date of the originating city. So where is it being written from? Then there's an introduction. First paragraph or two basically covers the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And then the body copy comes after that, and that's paragraphs that provide further explanation and background on the introduction. Often it has like it includes non-gratuitous direct quotes from key players, partners, celebrities, so on and so forth, woven throughout the letter. Then there's a boilerplate, and a boilerplate basically provides background on the issuing company or project. There can be multiple boilerplates that are required if there are like multiple partners. So if it were being sent out by SGS, there would be an SGS boilerplate that talked about what is SGS, who is this company, what do they do, where are they from, so on and so forth. And then after that, there's a close, and there's a use of one of these three symbols usually, which is like a -30 or a ####, or the word end in all caps. And that comes after the boilerplate, but before the contact info. And this signals the end of the copy. And when I say copy, I mean the text, the words that are being written. So basically all of the information that the press needs to know comes before one of these three sort of closing symbols. And then after that, you have contact information, name, phone, email, for the media relations contacts. And if you're releasing at a live event, then you want to also include a cell number. But you can also look at the example from the Blues, which I'm not going to go through now, but please take a look at their press release because it shows exactly this information. Okay, press kits are basically ensemble packages with materials about the project, including text, video, graphics, photography, and review copies provided to the press to enable them to do their jobs. Press kits are commonly used for company launches, product launches, press conferences, and events. But there's also something else called an EPK, and this means an electronic press kit, in which every document that you would put in like the printed press kit is provided electronically. So for a lot of industry events, and we'll talk more about those coming up, but the press kits are actually published online, so buyers can access them from anywhere. And they're usually in like a PDF format, and include technical information. So the length of the film, the format, or the length of the TV series, what it's about, so on and so forth, along with the log line, a 100-word synopsis of the story, a 400-word synopsis of the story, the director's vision statement, and then you also have bios from the team, production credits. You'll also include awards if you've won some, sales and distribution, and also press contacts, and then live links to clips and other online assets, which could be posters, for example, or yeah, anything, any artwork that you might want people to have, your logo, for example. It could also include like headshots and production shots, like from the actual production. Visuals are critical to your press kit. Online and print journalists rely heavily on still images, so they have to work even harder to compete. Photos can include cast headshots, action shots, behind the scenes, production shots, product shots, and they can be shot like, in a studio, like in a professional setting with professional lighting, or they can be shot on set. You just want to keep in mind that captions usually run left to right, so you want to make sure, you want to think about like who is standing on the left side of the frame. Okay, and the other thing in the press kit would be pitch letters. So pitch letters are basically cover letters to the press, and they accompany a press release or a press kit, informing journalists of news and also soliciting, that means asking for media coverage. The subject line should briefly say like what it's about, and then you want to start with a brief synopsis. It can also include logistical information about events, interview availabilities with the showrunner or the cast or executive producers, for example. It should also include contact info, a list of which photos are attached or included, and an alert that the press release is pasted in the email. Okay? It should not be filled with, again, these like business jargon, buzzwords, or cliches. And again, you can look at the article, A Free PR Critique, and see what I mean when I talk about that. Okay, next we're going to talk about media events, choosing talent, press conferences, media tours and press junkets, and public speaking. So choosing talent, you want to choose actors as spokespeople who can handle press in an interview situation, who possess showmanship or presentation qualities, and spokespeople who are authentic and engaging are actually more widely covered by the press than those who aren't. At a press conference, each spokesperson should wear a hat. And I don't mean literally, I mean like a subject hat. One person talks about, for example, the business presentation, while another may explain the project's creative process. And another may provide the sizzle, and that the sizzle is usually the celebrity. One person may be chosen to like host the press conference, and this is usually a senior publicity executive or a project director or producer, and should be run by someone with confidence and experience. Press conferences are used to make major announcements, update breaking news, or serve as ongoing press vehicles. So they're all pretty similar. They're short, with some formal remarks or presentations, usually then followed by a Q&A. So from several weeks before the press conference up to the day of the press conference, the project sends a media alert to invite the press. When the press arrives, they usually check in where they receive, a press package. And this has the press kit in it, so the press release and the background info, along with the pitch letter. You also have film festival conferences, as well as Television Critics Association press tour and game conferences. At a film festival, the creators will often have a Q&A session, like after a screening, for example. At the Television Critics Association press tour, or the TCA as it's called, This takes place twice a year, and it's a 2-week event where networks and cable present their new programs and new seasons to about 200 of North America's top television critics. The heads of programming are also usually present. The sessions are rough because about 85% of new television programs fail, and critics are discerning and quote unquote jaundiced. They've been there, done that. So it takes, a little bit to impress them. Takes a lot to impress them. They're jaded. So each tour actually generates 40,000 stories, with approximately 45,000 more stories held back on released at the premiere. So this is why it's often referred to as the Death March with cocktails. Game conferences occur as part of a larger industry event, such as E3, PAX, or the Game Developers Conference. The biggest press conferences are hosted by Sony and Microsoft, usually to introduce new consoles and game titles. Sometimes the talent isn't taken on these tours. This is common with book promotion. Sometimes media tours are conducted by satellite, like Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and other ones. And in those cases, audiences attend virtually, and the author gives a talk and then takes questions. Then there are like all-purpose events, and they can take another route. For example, if you were developing a project about espionage, you might hold a premiere or a press conference at the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. Okay, and last but not least, public speaking. A big part of being a media maker and a media marketer, the CEO of your own project, is being able to present yourself and your project in a natural, engaging, and compelling way. So this is why in your very first semester, we begin writing and practicing your author statements. And from the first semester, you have 4 years to write, rewrite, edit, and refine your author statement so that when you are invited to events, you will have a speech prepared and practiced. And this is also why it's your homework. Surprise! I know, don't hate me. Like, you might hate me now, but like 3-4 years from now, you won't hate me. And I can tell you a story about Amelia. When she went to the Fantasy Festival in the fall, she was asked to, read from her new book that had just been published, and give an author talk. And it was going to basically be an hour. And so they asked her to talk about herself for the first 15 minutes, and then to read for about 15-20 minutes, and then have Q&A for the remaining 15 to 20 minutes. And she called me up in a sheer panic. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what I have to write a speech. Oh my God. And I'm like, Amelia, you've done this already. It's your author statement. And she just, oh, that's right. I have my author statement, which at SGS we'll practice in like a 5-minute form, a 10-minute form, and a 15-minute form. But she's been practicing that for 4 years, so she had it, and so it went beautifully at the Fantasy Festival. Anyway, yeah, so it's your homework. I want you to record your author statement, no more than 5 minutes, and you can use audio, or you can use audio only, or you can use audio and video. And then I want you to share your author statement in our Facebook group. Okay, so let's say you have until Friday to do that. Next Friday. Let me check the date on that. Hold, please. I know you're hating me right now. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Okay. So by Friday the 15th, May 15th. Cool, right? But cool. Okay. So what you want to do when you are doing public speaking, you want to start with the recognition um, that the start with the recognition that the audience is always rooting for you. The audience is always on your side. They are actually there to learn from you. They're not there to judge you. Your job is to serve up what you already know. Okay? You're just talking about things that you already know. And you know what? If something goes wrong, try to laugh it off, because honestly, tech goes wrong all the time. It does. You'll forget things sometimes. You don't have to be perfect, and that it's okay. If something goes wrong, just laugh. Everybody understands. Everybody understands. You can use visuals to actually take some of the heat off of you. The best presentations are extremely well prepared, but they don't look like they are. So watch some TED Talks. TED Talks are amazing examples for great speakers who have prepared presentations, prepared visuals, and implement those in a successful way. The best general presentations start with an engaging or a personal opening. Then they usually set up 3 messages that then pay off by providing detail and relevance to those 3 messages. And then they close by wrapping those 3 things inside of one single idea. And after that, you want to thank the attendees. You never want to use text-heavy slides. What you'd rather do is use bullet points as talking points. So if you see a bullet point with a topic, you can take that and you can just talk about it. And if it's too long, cut it back. Sometimes you'll go to a conference with a panel. This usually has a moderator and a few experts. And these panels should be fun, and they should deliver insightful information. If you host an event, you want to make sure, I know this sounds like common sense, but you want to make sure that there's Wi-Fi. And then also create a hashtag for the event. Because by creating that hashtag, you can track, the social chatter. And because you have that, you'll have data and statistics, which is your quantitative research, as well as being able to look at the content of the posts, which is qualitative research. Okay, that's it for class 5. A lot of information. Work on your author statements, record them, share them in the Facebook group, and I'll be back soon with class 6. All right, take care, guys. Bye.